Hi, everybody. Welcome to Non-Tech Talk Tech Talk, hosted by Greenlight. We're just going to be talking about sort of things like usage, impact, and value of business technologies that we use, both as a technical and non-technical perspectives. My name's Louis Goldenberg. I am joined by my colleague Michelle Davis. Hello,
And my
Michelle,
cat,
and
Marty.
your see, I've unfortunately kicked my dogs out of the room
I
because I
can't.
wasn't sure if they're going to jump up on me. But this is a part of the non-technical part of the business technologies where you have animals in your
Yep,
workspace all the time
all
now.
the time. On my counter. Yep.
All right. Well, let's kind of jump into it. We've decided to sort of do this inaugural tech talk session, talking about something sort of really basic, really simple technology, artificial intelligence.
Just, you know, it's been around forever.
Yeah, everyone uses it. It's
Everybody
it's
uses it.
it's on your phone. It's in everything you interact with. So people just don't realize that's what it is.
Yeah.
And of course, what we're really trying to say is, we welcome our new AI overlords.
Hmm.
And we want to chat how incredibly powerful, helpful they are to our day to day lives and how we use them. So maybe what we'll do is I want to start off with Michelle, and you and I chatted about this before, but do you feel that you're a really technical person? So somebody who really kind of understands the inner workings of how technology functions.
I think you're trying to get me fired. Uh, no, I wouldn't think that I'm a technical person. I think um, especially with new technology, I think I come like as a millennial, I come from the age of being able to, be tech support for my parents and my grandma. I know to turn my computer off and on again before calling IT. I built my own computer before using a lot of YouTube videos and trial and error. But when it comes to AI, more modern technology, I find myself kind of falling behind now and really feeling like, what do I need to know? What's applicable to me? This is moving faster and faster than
Okay. So, well, I sort of get the same sort of approach too, I guess, from some way. So, same thing, being a millennial, even if it's on the older side of being millennial.
ever.
I grew up in the time where internet wasn't, it was around, but it wasn't really a thing everyone
Hmm.
had. That being said, I had computers really, really young. I was always into them. I got quite technical, not to the point where I'm doing like in-depth software development as much as I kind of want to and do some of those things. It's just it was never that big driver for me.
Yeah.
But being able to see some of these technologies, especially things like AI, sort of come up, grow, and be what it is now, it's kind of amazing to see how that's happened. And a lot of
Hmm.
it too is even just sort of it's not something we even saw. Like in the last year or two, yeah, these big LMs like a ChatGPT or an Anthropic Claude, like everyone's like, oh my God, these are amazing. They can do everything. And that's probably another conversation for a different time of what they actually do and how they work. But
Hmm.
like that kind of brought the whole marketing term for AI really big into public space. But we've had these types of technologies around for a long time. Like everyone walks around with the smartphone
Hmm.
in your pocket, and those all have pieces built into it. Like you've got Siri for Apple. You've got well, I don't even know if Google calls theirs things anything other than Google Assistant, but just you've had those. You can use them. It's just part of our day to day life. Their smart homes, things like that. So it's always just it's cool seeing some of that stuff sort of come into play, and now become more, I guess, commonplace to talk about, right? It would always
Hmm.
be like you talk to your technical friends about it, or in the business side, like people that are working with it directly. But other than that, you never kind of mentioned. Now it's
Hmm.
everyone talks about it all the time about every single thing, right? It's
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah. Um. So AI, of course, it's very technical, kind of at its core. It lots of complex algorithms and learns from over time from data. But not being that super technical person yourself, what are your kind of thoughts on AI, especially maybe in like the day-to-day work life and things that you
Mm.
do?
Yeah, I think what I've realized is I really like using AI. I use it to help me rewrite things, integrating it into my day to day. I think where I struggle is using it to the best of its capability. So, what kind of tips and tricks would you recommend, like for new users, that they could really integrate into? Well, I open Chat GPT and I ask it a question. Well, how can I ask that question better? How can I, what should I actually be doing to get the best out of it? Especially, thinking about like hallucinations and things like that. Like, what is that, and how can I try to prevent that in when I do write a prompt or put something into ChatGPT?
Okay. And just to maybe help anybody that's not overly familiar with, when you're saying hallucinations,
Mm,
typically you're just talking about like you ask it a question about something and rather like it may say something that sounds really good. Like, oh
mhm.
yeah, that sounds great, but
Yeah,
it's made up. It's fake, right?
yeah,
It has nothing to actually do with what you're doing. It sounds correct,
mhm,
but isn't quite. And so yeah, hallucinations being that the AI agent is just using it's made the wrong choice in what it should have responded with. It's made something up or it's just pulled that data that sounds correct, but just
mhm.
being completely wrong potentially, or at least maybe not right to what you were trying to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I know, like very similarly. So I use in like my day to day. I used to use GPT all the time. I do use it a bit now and then. I've
Mhm.
mostly kind of converted over to using Anthropic Claude.
Yeah.
There's a couple others like I've used Gemini a little bit here and there. Looking at Grok as well. Um, I love just the idea of throwing concepts and ideas at them and having them kind of shape my ramblings into more cohesive thoughts. A
Mhm.
lot of what I tend to do is, building documentation, especially like guidance and trying to put together sort of like marketing content, things like that to help help our sales side, also any client engagements that we might have, help them really kind of understand what actions need to be performed or how to do a certain thing, how to kind of grow their automation program. So that's where I
Mhm.
tend to use it a lot more with kind of helping that that writing style, and I'll usually provide it like a very brief prompt up front, like, hey, here's the writing style, here's
Mhm.
a couple examples of what I do. That helps it kind of keep it in line of, okay, I'm going to try to respond in the same way Lewis would, gives me a response. And I think one big thing too, though, is to realize is whatever you get out of these LLMs, that's not something you should probably just copy and paste in and use, right? You need
Yeah.
to massage that data a bit because you'll actually like. There's a lot of stuff now. If I'm looking at any sort of online form or emails that come in or blog posts,
Mhm.
I can fairly quickly identify if it was written by AI because there's little there's tells
Different.
in what it does, like how the wording is structured.
Yep.
GPT, for example, a lot of cases rather than using commas or semicolons, just uses a dash, right?
Mhm.
So that it like jumps out right away as like, oh yeah, there you go. There's something
Mhm.
like not just that one thing, but stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I actually have a transcript on the side that is like a transcript of myself talking and using my own language that I can then input to say, make this sound more like this sample of me talking. So I have that as well to input if I am trying to tone down the chat GPT and make it sound more like something I would write. So I have a sample of transcript and a sample of my own writing that I can input so that I can get a better feedback that sounds like me, um, which is really helpful.
That's awesome. So aside from
Mhm.
like an LLM like a Chat GPT, are there any other particular services you use? I know you and I've chatted a little bit about things like
Mm.
Chart.
Mhm.
How's that go for you? Like, what are you using there for?
Yeah, so Lucid Chart has been really awesome. We we find that we have like a lot of as a business analyst team that documents processes, especially in really, really great detail for RPA. being able to document our steps from a process and then pop it into their AI tool and have it create a first draft of a business process, step by step and decision points with branching paths, as well as coming back in and then being able to chat with that AI to say, hey, add a step here, change this wording here, add on this additional exception or alternate path has really helped us speed up our documenting our process. Um, I have to say that for my team, the feedback that I've received, because we have a very senior team, is I'm kind of tired of doing the grunt work of creating Visio documents. So for us, it's giving a lot of job satisfaction to our business analyst team to take away the things that they don't really like doing, right? Like there's not a lot of reward of sitting there and adding boxes and typing things out when at the start. Cleaning it up, making it look pretty, making sure that everything's there and correct is where they would prefer to focus, rather than just, I already documented it in an SOP and now I've got to go put it into a Visio flow. So it helps us skip
Right.
that step.
Yeah. So, well, and maybe that actually kind of touches on something else I've been thinking of, and it's come
Mm,
up when having conversations with clients. But you might have answered it a little bit here, but sort of like how do these types of tools impact the role of a BA? You know, like
yeah.
yourself, and you've kind of touched on that. But do you see this as being, even for other roles, as something that um, would be beneficial, or is it going to be more of, that whole, oh, it's taken away, my work, so now I'm, what am I going to do now?
No, I think for us, I mean, being in the consulting world, one of the issues is we can't use this with every client right now, right? So to start, one of our biggest issues is making sure that clients accept that we can use this on calls and accept that we can use some AI tools within our work. But for now, we're still business as usual with clients because we don't want to have any data privacy issues with them. We want to make sure that they're fully on board before we use those tools with them. Uh, but if they are on board and when they are on board, it helps us note take way faster. It actually helps us be just better BAs. It doesn't take away from the work that we're doing. We're just able to point our focus in better areas. So we stop being BAs. We're being more consultants. We stop doing data entry and a lot of like listening to a recording and documenting what was said. Instead, we're able to spend our time analyzing what was said and focusing on asking the right questions, which we can also have AI help us with, which is great. So we can also use AI to say what questions would should we be asking? Did I miss anything here? So it helps us check our own work as well.
Well, that's a good approach. I have there's a lot of internal stuff that I kind of deal with, and it's the same sort of idea where I don't want to have to keep doing these same things over and over and over again, and
Hmm.
that's where I see some of this coming into play. Now, a lot of the things that I have to deal with tend to be a little bit more complex. Like if I'm dealing with, for instance, responses to
Yeah.
information or response for proposals. Um, there's a lot that goes into that. When those come in, I've used AI to help sort of take, some of the more in-depth questions, help me do a little bit of research, but also more of take, like I said before, take a lot of my thoughts and everything, throw it at it and make it into something cohesive
Hmm.
that I can put in. What I'd like to actually be able to do and this is something I'm very slowly working on internally when I get the time, but I want to create some sort of RAG or context-driven, data based off of all these previous responses that we've done and
Hmm.
all the answers that we've kind of come up with for things, throw it in there. And it may just be like, maybe I take all these, I clean it all up, like take out any client information, things like that, and just put in
Yeah.
something like a notebook LM. And then I can just
Yeah.
turn around and come to it and say, hey, here's a question. Can you please look at, have we responded to this before? If
Hmm.
so, what was the response that we provided? Then that might just take care of like 90% of my effort, because maybe like, yeah, here's a response. I'm like, okay, well, that fits it exactly, great, I can just reuse it. Or it's not quite there, let me just change this slightly, but at least I have a base to
Hmm.
start with. So it's something big that I want to get to, because this also then helps me turn around and say,
Yeah.
I don't have to be the only one doing this for the organization anymore, we can have others come in and help
Yeah.
more with some of that too, right? So because they don't have all that previous knowledge that I've sort of gained over the years of doing this, same sort
Hmm.
of thing when I first started doing it with Greenlight, right? I didn't have most of that knowledge. It was all within, our CEO and COO and their heads because they've been doing it for so long. So I'm
Yeah.
just like, well, if I can make this easier and have other people take it on, is work I don't have to do myself anymore. Somebody else can step in and deal with it. And that way, if I'm on a project or doing some other work, it's not a critical thing for me to pause that to have
Yeah.
to turn to do this, right? Because we can always pull more people to do it.
Yeah, and it's creating those repositories. Like Notebook LM to me is something that you can continually add to, and it is that brain dump. It's like, it's not oh, I have to sit there and I have to write a document specific for training somebody on something. I can dump in transcripts from recordings. I can dump in, calls that we've had. You can put in links from other sources, from websites. So, like for us, you can put in a link from UiPath, you can put in a link from AA, and include that within that, our internal notes on best practices or calls that we've had, or PowerPoint presentations that we've put together. And then you can use that to um, have people query as like a first level of, query this first before you go ask somebody. Or
Right.
my personal favorite is listen to the create the podcast thing that they have. I find that really, really helpful, when you're trying to really summarize like multiple things and you just want to kind of glean some information. If anybody listening to this hasn't played around with that, give it a shot. It is a lot of fun to listen to those podcasts and be a little freaked out by how much it sounds like two people just having a conversation about a topic.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun.
I've tried that a couple times with the podcast side, and one of the cool little features I found is you can introduce yourself into the podcast.
Hmm.
So you just essentially just click a button, and they'll be like, "Oh, hey, it looks like we have somebody joining us."
Hmm.
And you introduce yourself, and then you start talking. So it's a little jarring with the pause while it waits for you to respond, and then it picks up from there. But
Yeah.
it actually listens to what you're saying and then responds to what you've provided it.
Yeah.
So that it's kind of cool. I've been looking at doing something like that just for like in personal life and whatnot. I play
Hmm.
Dungeons and Dragons with some friends, so I wanted to use that to help kind of build out some scenarios, especially when I have like non-player characters talking and whatnot. So
Hmm.
it's kind of neat in that regards, where you can take it not just from a business side, but also into something where you could use in your personal
Get
life
creative.
quite easily. Yeah, and that's the thing; it
Hmm.
lets you get very creative for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like when ChatGPT first came out, like my favorite thing to use it for was creating a meal plan for the week. So I could just be like, hey, with this list of groceries, I want to hit these specific macros, that type of thing. Create me a meal plan that's going to work for me. I don't like these foods. I like these foods. Kind of go back and forth with it, and be able to come up with like new recipes. It can refer you to websites, and it's way faster than trying to come up with a grocery list. So that was really fun.
That's interesting to say that because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
But mine was it's a little slightly different where we came up with like here's the different meals that
Hmm.
we wanted to go with, and we just keep
Hmm.
adding to that list. And then all I do is I've created a standard prompt that I
Hmm.
throw into it, and then I just say, okay, now here's the list of meals. Pick 7 random meals for the week, and tell me all the ingredients for it, combine anything. So like if there's, let's
Hmm.
say, hamburger for 2 of their meals, chicken for a couple of them,
Hmm.
whatever it might be, put those together then. So at least I then know, okay, I need to go buy this much of each thing.
Yeah,
And there's my grocery list of everything. It's helped
exactly.
quite a bit with taking away the like, hey, what do you want to do for dinner tonight? Well, we already have that planned out. And here's
Yeah.
everything for it that we already got. So
Yeah.
that's really kind of cool is hearing somebody else's
Yeah,
done.
really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, so that does bring up one other thing. So we've kind of talked around like how we talk to these sort of AIs, and we've mentioned
Mm.
prompting a couple times. So let's maybe chat a little bit around what like prompting actually is, maybe for people that don't really know. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll assume we're talking about like something more well known, like a ChatGPT or an Anthropic Claude, not necessarily something like a built-in piece of software inside a platform or something. But I
Hmm.
know, like when I first started with these tools, so a couple years now, uh, initially I'd always get like very basic responses because it would be like a lot of back and forth because I would just come
Hmm.
in and do what's called zero shot, where I'm basically just going in and saying, "Hey, I'm looking for this thing, or I'm trying to understand this. Help me do this. Here's my question." A very one or two sentence thing, and then trying to get a
Hmm.
response. Now I have to keep having that conversation with it back and forth, back and forth. And it would
Yeah.
take me like 10, 15 minutes to get to the point where I wanted it to get to because I didn't understand how to do prompting properly at the time.
Hmm.
Now, after diving into a little bit more, I very rarely do zero shot. Sometimes there's a point to. Typically now I'll do either a very structured prompt or at least something that's near shot where I'm providing some examples or specific details to it.
Yeah.
And that's helped get a lot better responses I found for what I'm looking for because it helps you focus in. For anyone maybe listening that doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'm saying zero shot, far shot, few shot, prompting in general. The idea being that you provide some instructions to the model just
Hmm.
to help it understand a little bit more. So I might say, "Hey, here's my question," and I'll put that within a like a specific section for it of questions. I'll tell it, "Here's a role I want you to take on. You are a automation expert, or you're a doctor focusing on knee surgeries. Whatever it might need to end up being."
Hmm.
And that helps the models then focus a bit more on the type of information that they're going to be looking up, responding with.
Hmm.
And you can get quite complex, especially like with us working in automation. I don't know how much you see, Michelle, with those what the devs build, but I know like when we're building some of them out is you have to be very clear, very concise with your prompts because you want to make sure that whatever that result coming back, if it's making a decision
Hmm.
or if it's trying to determine the next step, it needs to be like the same repeatable sort of approach each time, and it can't be like a super vague thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've learned quite a bit of prompting over reading articles, technical articles, white papers, random user posts on forums. Um, Common nomenclature course is called prompt engineering. I don't like it. We
I know
hate
your
it.
thoughts and
We
feelings.
hate it. I prefer calling it like prompt designing.
Yeah.
Um, Not really relevant, I guess, at this point. It's just one of those things that like every time I talk about it, like with people are like, "Oh, prompt engineering." I'm like, I don't like calling it prompt engineering. You're not engineering anything.
I
Uh,
mean, I feel like you also don't like that it's called AI, but
yes, because it's not actually AI.
it's
It's a
not
marketing term. But
actually.
yes, we'll live in the marketing world, and everyone calls
We'll
this
live in
stuff
the world of
AI.
AI and prompt engineering for today.
Yeah. But yeah, that being said, like those are some of the techniques I kind of use. Is there anything that
Okay.
you do yourself to help with that?
Yeah, so I think writing things out, I think definitely like if you're asking a question, like giving it context, like you say, like if I'm asking a question and I need something, what information do I need back? What's relevant to me and my answer is really important. Also, um, like spend the time to write out a longer prompt. And if you're struggling with your prompts, asking the AI, how can I improve my prompt? What more information do you need from me to better improve my prompt? So being able to ask the AI, what would you have changed about my prompt, or what more information do you need from me in order to give a better answer, is also really helpful.
Yeah, I've done that a couple times where I get to the end of something and I realize I've now asked like 4 or 5 questions to get it to the point.
Hmm.
And even if I'm using a prompt at the start, and I'm like, okay, going back to the original prompt, what could I have changed in this to have made this better to get to this answer quicker?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, typically they give a fairly good approach for what
Yep.
that looks like, right?
Yeah.
A lot of cases using things like delimiters in the prompting helps quite a bit. So that's just specific tags depending, if it's ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. to help kind of provide that guidance.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's kind of cool to hear, how you're taking that
Yeah.
approach, especially like you say, as being a fairly like a not super technical person, you're getting
Hmm.
so much value out of it.
Yeah. Um, some other things that I find really helpful is asking it for its source. So when prompting, provide me the sources for the information
Mm.
that you're providing back. I think the other day you asked a question in a chat, and then I answered no because I think it was like, is this company part of a Fortune 500
Yeah.
company? And so I put that in and said, like, asked that question, copied and pasted it over, and included, please provide the sources where this came from. So I was able to click on that and validate that that is accurate information that's being provided back. So that hallucination side of it, if you are doing that, or if you want to read further into that subject, being able to gather that information into one area and then click into that and get more information so that you can understand, like, is this a valid source of information that I would trust in my area? And just dive into that. How old is that information? Maybe there's a more recent study that I should be looking at. And those are things you can include in your prompts then, like only look at studies or information from X, Y, and Z. Only look at information from the past 10 years. Like those things may be really helpful to include in your prompts as well.
Yeah, I found too when you're doing, and it may just be more when it's like some technical part of it, but
Hmm.
I usually use sort of a chain of thought approach where, hey, great that you gave me the answer. Tell me your like, how did you get here, right? And I'll
Yeah.
usually include that at the start of the prompt if it's something that's relevant to it. So here's
Hmm.
my full prompt of it, and I'm like, provide me the steps or tell me how you got to this. Do your chain of
Hmm.
thought, and it'll actually walk through like, here's my answer, here's how I got to that answer, right?
Yeah.
It's quite helpful seeing some of that because then that does also, like you say, it helps reduce hallucinations, helps you also have a little
Hmm.
bit more confidence that what it's telling you might, is correct. There is always that bit of, validate what things are telling you, especially if it's like informational. Not so much
Hmm.
like if it's a maybe instructional for how to do something, especially when it's quite clear and easy to be able to see if it's right or not. But yeah, if it's like, hey, tell me about this, something that happened 20 years ago, tell me the chain of thought, where you got this, how you got to that point, and now you can really validate
Mm.
some of those pieces a bit more. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Another area I'm using uh, AI a lot is writing Excel formulas or assisting me with writing an Excel formula, especially if you're doing like a lot of like nested if situations and you've got a huge formula. I ran into a situation last week where I had a formula that I knew I wanted to use, and I had to build it out to be every 7 columns for repeating 13 times. And so instead of writing out that like nested if kind of scenario, I was able to just give it to ChatGPT, say, write me this like this, and then make it start at this column C and repeat every 7 columns for 13 repetitions. And then it was able to give me that formula back, copy and paste it into Excel, and it worked perfectly. So it was
Okay.
just like really nice and fast to do that instead of writing all of those out and try to figure out what is every 7 uh, columns going to be. It was a lot faster to do it that way.
Yeah, that's kind of cool though. That's good.
Mhm. One thing that we're looking at from the BA team is how do we make some longer running processes for BAs long term to just improve our quality of life and enable us to have faster delivery, faster turnaround time for our customers. Like we're looking at using transcripts to extract process information, create a document that is similar to an SOP that automatically checks. So we would use the transcript to use generative AI to extract from that the steps of a process, and then also ask us, look at that and say, here's where you should ask follow-up questions. Here's where there's gaps. And this information could be a requirement. This could be a rule. Helping us go to that stage, then being able to have another call, follow-up call feed that back in, regenerate that original list. So were there any changes or discrepancies between calls that we need to make updates to? Feed that into something like Lucidchart to create our process flow, update our process flow after each call, help us generate a PDD out of that. So help us generate requirements using generative AI to take our requirements document and write a test cases based on that. So how can we use it to write test case scenarios? Using it to generate testing data, which is a great area. Give me um, give me a list, give me a table that has names, addresses, dates of birth, all of that. I used ChatGPT to generate that when we were doing some Appian processes. So we needed some data to input. So that's a great, easy way to get that information. Um, yeah, so those are areas that we're looking at using it within our BA team to just kind of reduce the amount of paperwork that we're doing, really, essentially, and let us just kind of more focus on our clients.
That's yeah. I agree. It's there's a lot of good areas where it can be used for. I do get worried sometimes of overusing it. Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't, like I don't want everything I do just to be like, oh, let me go use the AI and figure it all out, right? Like I
Yeah.
enjoy trying to figure things out myself and build up from that. But I think like
Mm-hmm.
we sort of touched on it a little bit before, where it's the minutia, right? I don't want to deal with the repetitive stuff that I have to do every single time. I just
Yeah.
want to be able to focus on those main uh, newer or more challenging pieces that
Mm-hmm.
interest me and and are what wake me up every day, type idea. From a client perspective,
Mm.
uh, I I don't know if I should say it or not, but I
Hey, we
sometimes
can
get
cut
a
it.
little frustrated when we are working with some clients and they drag their feet with AI.
Mm.
Where in a lot of cases, they're like, "Hey, we really want to be in this space, we want to do it," and then when we bring up, "Here's how you can do it. Here's a great use case. Here's how you can
Yep.
go forward with it," it then turns around to, well, maybe, but what about the data, where's it going? Like, even if you've answered all those from a, which they're
Yeah.
great things to be aware of, like understand where your data is going, is it being trained by whatever models using it, who has access to it.
Hmm.
100%, that's security should always be asking
Very
those questions.
important.
But when you also have an approach for like, here's how you keep your data secure and how you can use it effectively, we can do this for you. And then it's dragging the feet. I'm like,
No.
but this is the exciting stuff. This is what's fun and can get you a lot of value really quick if
Yeah.
you would just try it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's definitely frustrating, especially like I see it a lot too in areas where this isn't private information. Like this isn't necessarily information that is needs to be super secure. And yet you still see that like, oh, we aren't exactly sure if we're comfortable using generative AI here, or we're not exactly comfortable sure if we're comfortable maybe doing um running anything through, or having a even just us having like an AI note taker on our calls.
Right.
It can sometimes be a struggle, and it's like, you know, it can be very difficult. It can slow us down as consultants as well, like where we're okay, well, it's going to take our project longer because we need a person to then review a call. And I always say, like, I'm a 1 to 4. If I spend 1 hour on a call, it can take me up to 4 hours of note taking, documentation, follow up, all of that. And that can be reduced a lot by AI.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes a bit of a struggle there with that. I'd like to see it become a little bit more prevalent, like in some of those areas where it's, even if it's locked down a little bit more, if it needs to be, but
Mm-hmm.
just get the value driving out of it.
Hmm.
And we sort of ran into the same sort of thing back when, RPA really kind of started exploding. Like RPA has been around for well over 2 decades, but it really didn't explode onto the scene until 2015, 2016, somewhere around then.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of struggle then too, where it's like, well, it's a bot. What's it going to do? What if it goes
Yeah.
rogue, which is not a thing
I've
robots
seen that a
do?
lot too. I
Yeah.
was like,
And it,
people are more risky that they're going to go
Yeah,
rogue than a bot.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Like a person can
yeah,
just go do whatever, if they have access to something, they
yeah,
can do whatever they want with it. A bot can't. It's going
yeah,
to do literally exactly what you tell it to and nothing else. Otherwise, it's going to
yeah,
say, I don't know what to do, and it'll stop working.
yeah.
Right. So it feels like we're kind of in that same sort of position right now with AI
Hmm.
where here's some things you can do. Now, yes, it does have a little bit more openness for what it can come back with or make a determination. But that's
Hmm.
where, like, okay, tie it into a person then. If you're not comfortable with it right away, that's fine. Have
Yeah.
everything flow afterwards to a person before a decision's actually made. If that AI is still doing, I don't know, let's call it 5, 10, 15 minutes worth of work, and you have someone review it for all of 30 seconds to a minute, you're still saving 14 minutes of time
Hmm.
that you would have had to do manually, right?
Hmm.
Like, there's still huge value there.
Yeah.
So it's like you have this approach clearly visible and available to be able to get there.
Hmm.
Keep people involved. Like
Yeah.
even with a lot of these AI processes, anyways, that would be going in, you still have a person at certain points, escalation points, and if you need it to initially to be for a full review before anything happens, then great, go ahead and do that, and then you can just start to pull that back later on. Like, okay, well, these ones don't need a review anymore. We're comfortable with them. They
Yeah.
come back like correct 99.9% of the time. All right, let's put those through, and we'll now only do these ones, and you can just keep adding and pulling back. What level of gating, I guess, would be in place.
Hmm.
Did you have anything in mind about agentic that you wanted to chat about?
What is agentic automation?
Agentic
I think
automation.
we've been hearing a lot about it, and maybe people even here that are like newbies uh, don't know what we're talking about. Sometimes I don't even know what we're talking about with agentic. And can you break it down for this level, way
Sure.
down here, please?
Yeah. So agentic, and I'm sure Angie's going to cut this part out. Agentic is all fluff and marketing. Uh, the capabilities are there, but everybody has it, and everybody thinks it can be everything when it's not.
So, Lewis, what's agentic automation?
So, cut. Now let's get a real answer. So, agentic automation is the idea that you're building these AI agents that can perform a lot more of the decision making work that you might have in play. And they also make that determination of what needs to be done. So rather than, if we look at it from like a robotic perspective, with RPA, you have to tell it every single step. Click this, type this, pull data from here, do whatever transformation is needed. It needs to know every single step along the way. With something like agentic, you're giving it a very structured prompt, but you're giving it more of a goal to achieve versus all those specific
Mm,
steps. Now that doesn't mean that there are not robotic parts involved with it. Right now, for instance, agents don't have the ability to go in and do UI automation, for example, right?
yeah.
And in a lot of cases, they can't even do like an API call. What they can do is, or sorry, let me rephrase that. They can't do a direct call for it. You can build those little tools though for them, and they can call those tools to perform that work.
Okay.
So, let's say you have like something like an invoice process. You're probably going to have a robot that starts off with getting the invoice from email, we'll say, and then downloading that, and now it has the information, it's extracted it, and it throws it over to the agent. It says, agent, either here's the data or here's the invoice file. Your goal is to extract the information from this invoice and ensure that it gets into our downstream ERP system. So with that, the agent now knows, okay, well, I have a document. I've identified it is, and we'll say it's identified as an invoice. It knows what to extract because it understands what an invoice is. Its models have been trained on this so much, so they know what
Yeah.
an invoice is and what data to pull. You can tell it the specific fields if you really have to. Maybe there's some custom fields for your industry or your business. Great.
Or regionally, I think like that's
Regionally,
really
yeah.
important too. Like I come from the invoicing world, and every single like state has different tax requirements, every country has different tax requirements and specific invoice like required data, and keeping track of that is next
Oh
to
yeah,
impossible.
it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
having
it being
even
up to
having those
date would be really
differences.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so. if it can understand that and gets that information, and now it needs to know, okay, well, I need to now get this into our ERP system. Now there may be some things that you add in and say, hey, if you see an invoice above a dollar amount, you have to let somebody know because they have to do an
Yeah.
approval. And it can make that determination. What is the dollar amount? Okay, it's
Mhm.
this. I'm going to call the tool that lets me do a call it to, the finance director and says, I need you to approve this before I can do anything else with this, please. Or if it's all good to go, it calls that other, a different tool that says, and that tool could be anything from an API call, RPA process flow,
Mhm.
could be just like accessing something like, I need you to put this data into Excel, right? It could be whatever that tool is. But it makes that call, passes the data. That tool does its thing and comes back and says, "Oh, I'm completed. I've done the thing you told me to do." It knows that's now done, and it goes on to that next step that it needs to get at that point. And that could come down to the point where it's making those decisions based on, oh, if it's this type of vendor, I know there's an additional piece I have to do here. I have to take care of, or I have to
Mm.
go and get some more information from another system because it's missing off of the invoice. I need to validate maybe the vendor email that this
Mm.
is coming from, stuff like that. So you're not you're not having to tell it specifically to go do those things. It's making that determination. You just give it access to the different types of tools that
Mm.
it might need to perform that work, and it'll figure
Yeah.
it out on its own. So
I
it,
was
it does.
thinking about I was thinking about this like use case with sales of like sales is like constantly on a call. Oh, I need to update this deal in Salesforce. I need to push out the date. I need to do this. Are those areas where this would be like really helpful, where you can kind of have, okay, great, you just go do the thing in Salesforce, and it can, rely on sales putting in some like random information into like a prompt for the agent to go do those things.
Yeah, you could have something set up like that. It's a little bit more complex in those cases, but definitely. You could even have
Mhm.
it as just maybe still using that Salesforce side. Like, I don't know, let's say you did a marketing campaign and somebody responded back to it. Well, you could have that get picked up, pass over to the agents, and they could say, okay, well, is this an existing client? Because it could go check
Mhm.
Salesforce. If it is, it gets their information. Maybe it sends out a blast email to them and say, thanks for the follow up. Here's the information that you asked for. We'll follow
Yeah.
up with a call, or it'll schedule a call. If it's not an existing client, maybe that kicks off and it knows to say, hey, one, I need to go create the customer in Salesforce.
Mhm.
Secondly, I need to go ping our sales executive, say, hey, somebody new has responded. You need
Mhm.
to schedule a call with them.
And it would know by region who that sales executive is
Right. Yeah.
automatically.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could do all that type of stuff. And you're not building necessarily the exact flow it follows. You're just saying, here's the tools that are available. Like there's a tool to send an email to somebody. There's
Hmm.
maybe templates that it can pull from and use. And when you have your rules and your prompt saying, if it's a new client, I need you to go, thank them for responding. First of all, here's a template. And secondly, I
Hmm.
need you to figure out who the regional sales executive is and let them know that they need to contact the person and provide them their contact information. If it's an
Cool.
existing client, just go update it, send that email blast, and maybe here's a link that they can click on to schedule a call with us. Right?
Yeah.
Something as simple as that. So
Cool.
yeah, there's a lot of there's definitely a lot of opportunity. It
Mm.
doesn't have to be a very structured process, like because that's one big thing. RPA was very much you needed a structured process to build.
Hmm.
Now a lot of those complex ones that we didn't build because there was like so much human decision required,
Yeah.
you can now use this instead. And it doesn't have to be like that it manages everything. It could be for a very specific thing, just to make a determination. Here's my information. Tell me if I should do something with this, yes or no. And it can
Yeah.
make that determination based on your business rules. Come back, say yes, cool, and then you've got the rest of your flow in there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, this was. I know we're coming up to time here, so this was a fantastic
Yeah.
conversation. I kind of really enjoyed this, especially being kind of the first one that we were doing. So
Yeah.
we'll
Thanks,
we'll wrap
Leo.
it up here. Thank you very much for hopping on and joining me today with this.